Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear for Steve Brown.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Good morning. Good morning. There we go. It's really nice to be here. It's nice to be here because I live in Portland. I'm used to having to go through and fight my way through TSA and fly in the cylindrical petri dish in the sky to go to speak. And it's nice to just roll out of bed, not even shave, I have to admit, and just come here and talk to you. So great to be here in Portland. I wanted to talk to you today about innovating in Moore's era. I'm assuming that if you are here today, you're interested in tech and you're interested in what it can do. And you're probably participating in that and using it to do amazing things. So I wanted to spend the next 30 minutes or so to give you an overview of where I see tech going, and just paint that canvas of what are the building blocks, what are the things you'll have at your fingertips to be able to innovate with in the future. And I'm calling this era Moore's era, because Moore's law has been around for 50 years now. This year is the 50th anniversary of Moore's law, but we're finally getting the real payoff of Moore's law. We'll have more computing deployed in the next 5 years than the last 50 years combined. So what are we going to do with that? First of all, I should explain a little bit about me and what I do. I am a futurist. It's kind of a bullshit title, but that's okay. What it means is I spend my time thinking about what's the world look like, feel like to live in 10 or 15 years from now. So I help companies figure out what will that world look like and feel like so that they can iterate back from the future rather than iterating from where they are today, which is fine, but it gets you sort of incremental, to think out 10 or 15 years and then work their way back and say, well, where do we need to start to get where we want to go? So that's what I do. Before I talk about the technology trends, which I think probably is what most of you are interested to hear about, I want to level set us a bit by just talking about the human trends. Being a futurist, you always have to start with people. Technology on its own is not much use to anybody. It is what you can do with technology to help people that matters. So thinking about some of the people trends, the human trends, is useful as a setup before we get into the technology stuff. So let me just run through very quickly some of the human trends that I'm thinking about, because you'll see those show up when we talk about the technology pieces. Let's start first with this idea of the sharing economy, access economy, that people want to own less stuff. If you are designing products in the future, you should be thinking about this as a central premise. You're going to hear some speaker later on talk about, Corey's going to talk about the dark side of the sharing economy. But from the positive side, there are lots of great reasons for people to share things. One of them being it's a much more sustainable world if we do so. More than half of US millennials in a survey last year said they do not plan to own a car, ever. Sharing economy is taking off with very expensive goods. It's also going to happen with very small goods once delivery shifts to being not just next day or same day, but next hour. And that will happen in the next few years. It's already happening in some test markets now. People want customized products. You're going to see a lot more customization. It's an unmet need from people in the world today. When they're buying things, they don't want to just buy the same thing everybody else has. Mass customization is coming. Again, just a data point to back it up. 79% of Americans aged 15 to 35 want to buy customized products. Most products you buy today are not customized. And the final big trend is urbanization. 2.5 billion more people will be living in cities around the world by 2050 than there are today. 2.5 billion people. That's about 180,000 people per day, every day, for the next 35 years. We're going to have to find ways to help people move around, to move goods and services into these cities, and to move waste out in much more efficient ways than we do today. If you live here in Portland, you already know what urbanization is doing to our city. If you like spending time in traffic on Highway 84, Highway 26, Highway 205, you know that we have to solve the transportation problem and look at it in a completely different way. Let's talk tech trends. So there are a lot of things going on, and I look at the world through the lens of computing. That's my background. That's what I'm trained to do. I have a long history at Intel. And so I think about the world through the lens of computing. And a lot of the tech trends you're going to hear me talk about are framed in that regard. For a long time now, technology has been bridging this gap between the physical world and the digital world. This is not a mind-blowing new trend I'm going to share with you. This is something that's been going on for at least 25 years, and it's going to continue. And a lot of the innovation, a lot of the breakthroughs that we're going to see are starting to really have those two worlds come together and start to blur in the middle. Where that happens, things become very interesting. What we're seeing is the physical world is becoming digital. So we've already seen all sorts of categories of product, from books and movies and music through to banking and finance and mail and games. All of this stuff has become digital. But where is that going to go next? What if you could digitize reality? What if you could digitize real life in real time? There's an interesting company called Replay Technologies. They have this technology called 3D. You may have seen it on ESPN or ABC Sports. They use it for replays. But what they're doing is you see these cameras, they have these 4K video cameras, about 30 of them, all around a stadium. The output of those, which as you can imagine is a pretty high bit rate of information, is streaming out into a big fat computer. And that big fat computer is then taking all of those video streams and in real time converts them into a 3D model of reality, which looks pretty close to reality. Let me show you what it looks like. The idea. So what's happening there is you're creating a 3D model of the world that allows you to place the camera anywhere you want in space. Now when you're watching the TV, why would you have to look at the view from the producer's viewpoint? If you want to sit back and do that and sort of outsource the production, you could do that, or you could be sitting in your tablet deciding how you want to view the action. If you're watching the World Cup, why wouldn't you want to stand on the goal line and watch those penalty shootouts being banged into the goals? So it completely changes the way people will interact with the world once you can digitize it, starting in sports, but you could take this and put this anywhere. So the physical is becoming digital. The digital is also becoming physical in the form of autonomous machines. Being able to take the digital world and make it physical and give it agency and let it move in the world. Those autonomous machines, formerly known as robots, are escaping their cages. Robots have been something that either lived on the pages of a science fiction novel, or they were things that generously built our cars for us. But they were trapped inside cages, and inside cages for good reason, which is that robots are big, huge, powerful, hydraulic creatures, and they can't see. They can't see humans, who are squishy collections of soft organs that tend to explode when hit by moving arms, not to put too fine a point on it. And so robots were trapped inside cages for good reason, because they were a safety hazard. The breakthrough in the next few years, and within the next decade this will be really perfected, is the idea of visual understanding. That computers won't just have the ability to take in a video feed and sort of see the world at a very perfunctory level, but will be able to understand the world that they see, to understand objects, the relationship between objects, to understand people, the relationship between people and objects, so that computers will be able to tell you where you left your keys. They will also be able to drive cars. And this is a huge breakthrough. Robot cars, self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles, whatever you want to call them, will change the way that humans move around the planet, because they solve the last mile problem. People don't take public transportation for pretty much two reasons. The first reason is the bus doesn't stop outside my house, and it doesn't take me exactly where I need to go. The other reason, which we're not going to solve with self-driving cars, is that there are people on the bus who smell of wee, but maybe we'll fix that with technology another way. But it solves that last mile problem, the first mile problem, so that maybe you will take a self-driving car to a transportation hub, go where you need to go, and then go the last mile. Maybe people will take a lot more public transportation that way. So we're going to have to think about using these robotic cars as part of a holistic transportation system. The other thing that we get out of computers that can see, hear, and understand the world is drones. And I don't mean the death machines from the sky. I'm talking about drones with cameras on them, drones that can do things for us, whether it's delivering parcels or taking pictures of the world. I want to show you a fun little video here. This answers the question, what would happen if a wearable and a drone had a baby? And the answer is this. This is a project called Nixie. It won the Make It Wearable Challenge that Intel was hosting last year. And rather than try and describe what this is, I'll just show you a short video.
Nixie looks like a watch or a bracelet as you go through your day. But with a signal from you, Nixie unfolds and flies from your wrist. It takes photos or video of you in action. In boomerang mode, Nixie will come right back to you. And in follow me mode, Nixie will follow along wherever you go. Then Nixie syncs with your cell phone so you can share your adventures instantly. Nixie will give you a totally new perspective. Nixie will follow you on your adventures. Nixie will free your hands. Nixie will capture the moment like never before.
Sounds crazy, right? Made up. This is something that's in prototype now. It was demonstrated for the first time at CES last year. Computing is going to change things very rapidly, and in ways that we think are science fiction. Science fiction is happening very quickly. Expect robots to be part of your lives in the next 5 years. Expect drones to be part of your lives within the next maybe 10 years, because there's a lot of FAA regulations have to change on that one. But I wanted to show you that video because it seems so crazy, and yet it's here today, in prototype, working today. So the point I'm trying to make is computing is everywhere around us, and it's been around us for a very long time. We have billions of devices deployed. I mean, you probably all have a smartphone in your pocket. You may have even brought a tablet with you today. Billions of devices deployed, and 40% of the planet is now online, connected to these behemoth computers that run the internet for us and provide all those services. So we're probably all aware of computing filling those parts of our lives. But computing shows up in unexpected places too. This morning, when you hopefully brushed your teeth, that toothbrush that you used wasn't whittled from wood by a little man in the forest. That was designed on a workstation using a computer. The position of those bristles to get the crap off your teeth was designed specifically and tested, in software on a computer somewhere. So even the simplest, most mundane products that we use in our lives, the components inside the engines of your cars, they're all designed on computers. Computing has touched every aspect of our lives today. And all of that is thanks to this idea of Moore's law, that computing gets better every year, every couple of years, it marches on. And Moore's law is continuing. It might be slowing down a little, because it's getting really, really hard, but it's going to continue. And what Moore's law does is it gives designers of chips a choice. Every couple of years, they can take the chip they made last year, and the one they're going to deliver next year, they can either shrink it down, or they can integrate more stuff. So the first path is they just add more stuff. Because the transistors get smaller, on the same piece of silicon, they can put twice as many transistors. More transistors means more goodness, more cores, more graphics, more USB ports, whatever it might be. Or they can take that same design and they can shrink it down. If you shrink it down, you can make it for roughly half the cost. So every generation, you get to include more capability or shrink it down and make it cheaper. If you add that over time, you get vast differences. This is why we have computers that are incredibly powerful on one end. These are the things that run the internet, do weather forecasts for us, that sort of thing. And on the other end, we're talking about wearables and the Internet of Things. So this will continue, and we get everything in between as well. So laptops in the middle, right? So we are taking advantage of an era of exponential economics. And this is the next 10 years is going to be the true payoff of Moore's law, Moore's era, where we get to take advantage of continued exponential increases. So we've seen 5 decades of innovation, when computers have gone from something that filled a room to something that's easy for a less than 1-year-old to use. So the question is, what comes next? Well, this bridging of the gap is going to continue. On the physical side of things, computing is going to get so small, we'll embed it inside everything. That computing is going to be able to sense the world and send information into the digital domain. In the digital world, there's going to be these massive computers that can process all this data and make sense of it and decide what to do with it. And then the loop will be closed as we bring that data back and blend it with the physical world. So this is the loop that we're going around. And I'm going to explore some of these in the rest of this presentation. First idea is these tiny computers. So Moore's law begets this thing called Bell's law. And Bell's law says that about every decade or so, the physical size of computers becomes about 1/10 of what it was. And we've seen that happening over the last 50, 60 years or so. Computers have now got so small that they're on our hands, they're in our pockets and purses, and the next thing is they're going to just dissolve into the world around us. So computing is closing in on us. What I mean by that is it is getting closer and closer to your brains. It used to be in a room that you had to go and visit. Then it came into your home and sat on a desk. Then it's gone into your pockets and purses. Now it's going to get strapped on your body. And ultimately, it will merge with us. But it's closing in on us bit by bit. And it's disappearing into the world around us. Computing will get so small, you will be able to think about just including it in every part of the world. Think about what's happening in California right now. Serious drought conditions. And yet when farmers water their fields, they're sort of spraying water almost indiscriminately into the air, and lots of it's just evaporating off. And they don't know which plant needs water right now, so they just water them all. What if you could put intelligence into the soil, till tiny compute elements into the soil so that the field could tell the farmer, a little bit damp over here, we're fine, or dry over here, also could do with some fertilizer, that'd be great. Because there's so much fertilizer, same thing. And then there's all that runoff. Not good. So if you could create a control loop so that the field can tell the robot waterers and robot fertilizers where exactly to put the resources, you could save a lot of water and get rid of fertilizer runoff, as an example. Because computing is getting tiny. This is a computer. It's come out of the University of Michigan. It's called the millimeter mote, a millimeter cubed. It's a very simple computer, but it will get more intelligent, more capable over time. Moore's law will take care of that. So we're looking at an era of smart, connected everything. Every object in our lives can become smart and connected. The example I use here is a teddy bear. Teddy bears are great. How many of you had a teddy bear when you were kids? How many of you still have them now? Okay. Thank you for being honest. Yeah. All right. What if a teddy bear, I mean, they're great for cuddling. That's the point, right? They're cuddling devices. What if they could do more than that? What if you made them smart? What if this teddy bear could now see, hear, and understand the world around it? What would you do with that? Maybe you could create a teddy bear that could read a book to a child. What would be the value of that? How would that change the way you think about that teddy bear? Well, first thing is you're creating new capability, new value in that teddy bear. The teddy bear can now read a book to a child. Great. I mean, if you're a parent, how many parents in the room? Okay, I'm having to look because I'm like lots of light here. Okay, some parents. So you know what it's like. Mommy, Daddy, read the book again. Read it again. One more time, one more time. And you know there's a glass of wine or a cold beer in the fridge downstairs. And wouldn't it be nice to just outsource that to Teddy once in a while? And if you're a good parent, you probably want your kids to learn other languages. Wouldn't it be great if Teddy could read a book written in English, and because it's connected to the cloud, do real-time translation, and read that book in Chinese or French or whatever language you might want. So you're creating a new set of value here. The second thing that it does is, because this teddy bear is connected, it can be connected to all kinds of amazing capability. It can appear to be a virtual supercomputer. Teddy can have very simple electronics in it, but because it's connected to the cloud, it can do real-time translation. It can appear to be much more brilliant than it is. The next thing you can do is upgrade Teddy Bear. So maybe you buy it, it speaks English, it reads in English, but you could add language packs. So you want French? Sure. Another $3 a month. You want it to do more than that? Okay, we could make it a security camera device for you if you want, when you're away from house. That'll be $5 a month. So you can not only do upgrades and fixes, you can start to think about creating service revenue. And it completely changes the way that you think about building, marketing, selling products. How much is a smart teddy bear worth? $60? $50? I don't know. Maybe it's $19.99 with a $5 a month reading service. Completely changes the way that you monetize that product. Making objects smart is also interesting for authentication. If you are Louis Vuitton or something like that, having people rip off your products is kind of an issue. If they have a smart component, you can authenticate those products much more easily than you can today. And finally, you can connect all of these devices together. If you're thinking about making robots that move out and participate in the world, when one robot learns something, it can tell all the other robots, so they can all learn together. And that people sounds like, oh, that's scary. They'll learn to kill us all. No, that's not the plan. But any device that has to encounter something in the world and figures out how to deal with it can then share that information with others, so that only has to be learned once. The other thing that is great about these smart products is that they are innately more customizable. Remember I said before, people want customized products. So the question is, if the cost of computing drops dramatically, as it will over the next 10 years, such that I can make any object smart for a marginal cost, let's say it's $1 or less, and there is much more value in a smart product versus a dumb product, why would I ever buy a dumb product again? And if you're in the business of making dumb products, you kind of need to be thinking about how to make them smart now, because when your competitors come out with smart products, your products become obsolete. So smart is something that has to be designed into everything. If there's any value in it becoming smart, it will become smart, and that will become the point of competition. So smart has to be much easier to design in than it is today, and smart is already becoming an ingredient. It's becoming much easier so that when you're picking, I want this kind of metal and some leather, and I want some cushioning, and then I want some smart, it should just be that easy to design in. You shouldn't need a small army of C++ programmers and board designers to go and put intelligence into an object. So smart is becoming an ingredient, and it's shrinking down. This is a computer on a button. It'll be available later this year. It's from Intel. It's called Curie. It's designed for fashion designers. It has accelerometers in it. It can connect to a small battery, and it allows you to very quickly stand up a wearable device. It has to be that easy. So smart is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. As I showed you before, this is the millimeter mote sat on the edge of a penny. This is how small it is. And these things are going to head to being sub 0.1 millimeter so that ultimately they can go in vitro. Not only are they getting smaller and smaller and smaller, they're getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. This is a Kickstarter project, the chip. Single board computer, runs Linux, you connect it to a TV. It's pretty awesome. If you haven't checked it out, go check online. This is going to enable us to put computing anywhere and everywhere, and it's already happening. This is the Amazon Dash button. If you have an Amazon Prime account, in certain markets, they're test driving this capability. It is a button that you have in your home, and when you want to order that object, in this case, some Tide, press the button, and it auto-fulfills. Amazon will deliver it to your home. It's making it easy so that the point of decision is exactly where you realize, oh, I'm out of powder, I'm out of Tide, need some more. Ultimately, the button will go away, because the home will just know when you need that. Other examples of where it's already showing up. I love this. Smart cows. It's like military intelligence. Smart cows, this is a project that's running in Canada where cows are being fitted out with sensing technology, because if you are a farmer and you have a sick cow or a pregnant cow, you need to know. So you can move them away from the rest of the herd so that the disease doesn't spread, and you can actually focus on taking care of that cow. And very often you can find out if a cow is getting sick the same way you find out if a human is getting sick. You measure their temperature. So it's a simple temperature sensor on the cow's skin. It allows the farmer to very quickly isolate disease and improves their ability to take care of their cows. All of this is this idea of the Internet of Things, sensing and computing deployed more broadly in the world. Whatever you call it, ambient computing, Internet of Everything, doesn't matter. It is this idea of ubiquitous computing throughout the world. It's smart objects, smart infrastructure, smart rooms, smart environments. In that world, you create these control loops. This is the way these things work. And sometimes, you're always sensing, in this example, the cow or the field. Is it wet enough? Does it need more water? You interpret the data that you're getting. You usually do that in the cloud. And then you're taking some action. Send out your army of robot waterers. And you go around that loop over and over again. And when you're doing that, you're typically doing that to optimize something. The question is, what should you optimize for? In the case of the fields, it's use less water. But it's a legitimate question to answer, because when we've deployed computing in the last, 25 years, 30 years, the focus for IT people is usually the same thing. Let's make it more efficient. And that's great. It's really great. We should continue to do that. But with the Internet of Things and the cloud, there are more things that we could go after than that. So there's all the different ways you can be more efficient. Let's improve productivity. Let's reduce time. Let's make more efficient use of our resources. Great. But what could you do to improve experience? How could you make the world feel more responsive to human needs? How could you make it safer? How could you make it feel more convenient? I talk to theme park companies sometimes. They're looking at how could we improve the happiness of our guests? That's what they're going after, not how to reduce the line lengths. There are lots of things that you can improve with technology that aren't about efficiency. So any of you that are thinking about doing things with the Internet of Things, I encourage you to do it, but just to stop before you jump in and ask the philosophical question, why? What are we optimizing for? Maybe it's beyond efficiency. One of the things that I've talked about is, how do you manufacture luck? How do you create serendipity as a service? Maybe that's what we should be going after. So we've talked about the physical becoming digital, the digital becoming physical. Whenever you are developing products and capabilities, I encourage you to think about weighing up what portion of what I'm doing is in the physical world, and how can I add value in the digital world? Because things in the physical world don't scale as easily as things in the digital world. Books are wonderful. I encourage us all to continue to have physical books. There's nothing quite like them. But once you put things into the digital space, you can start to scale them at marginal cost, and allows you to do lots of very interesting things. If you think about the physical versus the digital world, when it comes to music, we started off with LPs, for those of you old enough to remember those. They were a physical way of capturing and creating music. CD players went digital, but they were still a very physical medium, piece of plastic they put in a player. Now, most people are getting music from streaming services, whether it is from their phone or their computer in some way. And most of that value, all of the browsing, the curation, everything is captured in the digital world, and you can get to 30 million songs. It's amazing. Think about that teddy bear, the dumb teddy bear, entirely physical. The value of that reading teddy bear is captured in the digital world. So the question is, where will you create value in future? How could you think about creating more digital value, which scales, is more upgradable, and all the things that we talked about? It also makes you think about creating profit in new ways, which I think are good and healthy. In the old world, if you were creating a product, you would try and reduce its costs so you could maximize profit. You might be evil and decide to plan failure into that product. Think about these light bulbs as an example. You might innovate the product, and you might do that with the mind to, well, I'll make it so good that people want to throw away the last one I sold them and they'll buy a new one. So you create obsolescence that way. You might also segment the market and say, well, you don't just need one of these for this part of your life, you need one for this part of your life too, so I'll sell you 2 or 3 or 4. And then, you try and grow the overall market. That's the traditional way that marketing and product design is done today. But once you shift from selling a product as a product to selling it as a service, you have entirely different motivations. Suddenly now, in order to maximize profit, you're not incentivized to obsolete the physical thing. You are now incentivized to keep that physical thing around as long as possible, because that's your fixed cost, and then you're selling services through what is now a portal into somebody's life. So you're going to try and reduce your cost of service delivery. You're going to create new services, so the teddy bear that also has the security capabilities, for example. You're going to innovate those services, and your goal now is to keep customers, to keep them happy so they keep signing up for that reading service of $5 a month. So you're going to keep delighting them. So your motivations are now really positive and pure. And in theory, you should be trying to make these things last as long as possible. So you're going to design for reliability and longevity when you design the thing, because it's now in everybody's interests. And what this leads to is potentially smart products becoming more sustainable. They are not designed to be thrown away anymore. They're not designed to be obsoleted. This is one of the reasons I'm so excited about smart objects as a focus. So I'm going to wrap this up now, change gears, because I think this is really important to talk about, is virtual and mixed reality. Virtual reality is now finally becoming a reality. From the Lawnmower movie of 30 years ago to now has been a long wait, but finally Oculus Rift and a number of other platforms are here or about to come in the next 12 months. Virtual reality is going to be something that a lot of people start to explore, and the question is, as a new platform, what will people do with it? What's the value it will bring to human life? And I think the gateway drug for virtual reality is going to be Google Cardboard, because all it takes is a little bit of cardboard and an Android phone, and you're off to the races, trying virtual reality for the first time. And once people experience it, they're like, yeah, I want some more of this. And the question I have is, what does virtual reality become? Is it the new search? If you're going traveling, why go to TripAdvisor and look at a few curated photographs when you can actually go and stand in the hotel lobby and stand in the hotel room and have a look around? Is virtual reality going to become the new photography? Will it be the new way of capturing where you were and what you did? And now imagine that 3D technology that I showed you combined with virtual reality. What if you could stand on the goal line, like I said, or stand behind the pitcher's mound, or once Star Wars 10 comes out, stand and watch the lightsaber battle right there and look around and do whatever you want. We could start to interact with information entertainment in completely new ways. That's virtual reality. Augmented reality is this idea of taking the digital world and the physical world and blurring them together. When you do that, you get all kinds of really cool, interesting things. There are a number of companies innovating in this area. Google is doing their stuff with Magic Leap. We'll see what comes out of that. They're in sort of secret mode right now. Microsoft has been a bit more open with this, and their HoloLens project is looking very interesting. Their first generation is going to be a little bit limited on the field of view, but let's see where that goes over time. Moore's Law takes care of things over time. Let me just show you what this looks like in case you haven't seen this yet.
What if we could go beyond the screen, where your digital world is blended with your real world? Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
How are things going your end?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Perfect.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap in the place of the old one.
Now what?
And tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
And new ways to create the things we imagine. Because when you change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see. This is Microsoft HoloLens.
If they can actually pull that off, it's pretty interesting stuff. It took me a while watching that video before I realized that the little dog at the end was not real. It's a virtual pet. But a very interesting way of blending the physical and the digital world together. And it's going to bring a whole realm of content developers who have to create this virtual content. It is a new palette for people to tell stories, to share experiences, to share ideas on. What it means is that apps now are no longer trapped on little rectangular squares in our pockets. They now become physical or pseudo-physical in our real world. And you can even start to create this amazing depth effect and start to make it feel like surfaces have things hidden behind them. What it means is we can start to think about hacking the world that we live in. Our next speaker is actually going to talk about some of that and how you can use the palette of reality to start messing with that and start to have activist approaches. LaToya's going to come out in a few seconds and tell you that. But it really does change the way that we think about the world. What I'm saying with all of this is there's a huge amount of change still coming. Computing has revolutionized our lives, from weather reports to toothbrushes. It is going to continue to change, and we will see more change from computing in the next decade than the last 50 years combined. The good news is you get to be part of that. So my counsel to you, as I spend my life living in 2025, 2030, think about smart as an ingredient. How can you use smart as an ingredient in everything? Once you could make an object smart, think about every object in your life, in your workflow, at your home. If you made it smart and connected, what could it do differently? Always step back and get a little philosophical before you get all engineering. Ask the question, what am I trying to optimize for here? What am I really trying to do for people? And finally, don't be afraid to go way beyond product as we understand it today. Think about how you can start to move towards delivering services instead of delivering products, and use products as a gateway to deliver services. Push the products you have through the digital wormhole and create value in other places. You're now living in Moore's era. We're here. Make the most of it. Thanks for your time.
Let's hear it for Steve Brown, everybody. Steve, you want to take a seat for a second?
I forgot.
I'm going to sit down for a minute. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about the Teddy Ruxpin of the future, because the one that we had was super boring. Did anybody else just put rap tapes in him? Okay, just me. So we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. I have one question that's sort of localized. By round of applause, how many people are local to Portland? You live here? Yeah. So I've been really surprised arriving here from San Francisco at the resistance to the sharing economy. And I think even when that slide was up with the stack of books that just said dumb, I could feel people getting angry in the room. Portlanders, the home of Powell's. So how do you see that, which is one of the great parts of the town, right? It's sort of traditional for a major city. So how do you see the sharing economy, and even digital for that matter, sort of coexisting with the mom and pop, or is it hopeless?
I don't think it does anything to hurt mom and pop. Generally, people want to simplify their lives. In research, I see people are looking to divest themselves of all the crap that they surround themselves with. We've become this consumer culture, and we're told to buy and hold and keep and own, and we don't need to. There are lots of objects that you don't need. I have a toolkit. I don't make anything. I hang a picture once every couple of years, and I have a hammer for that, and it sits in my toolbox, which I'm very proud of because I'm a man. Got to have a toolbox. And I think, well, if I could get a hammer delivered to me in 15 minutes, why would I ever need to own one? To have a whole toolbox delivered to my house and have that just move around. How many hammers have been bought and cost a lot of money to make and resources and time that people don't really need? So I think the sharing economy is much more sustainable, and it's just a better way to live. We can live in smaller spaces because we won't need to surround ourselves with all this stuff that we use a fraction of the time. And when it comes to cars, most cars are used about 96% of the time. They do nothing. So you use them about 4% of the time. We would get rid of parking structures. We can turn them into parks. We could use public transport a lot more. This is all goodness to me. And I know you're going to hear about the dark side of the sharing economy, and I'm sure there is one, but I'm all for it.
You're going to have some radio cab drivers coming after you. Does anybody have...
But a cab is a shared resource. They're already doing the sharing economy.
Right. Are there any questions in the audience for Steve? We don't have a lot of time. I see a hand up right here. Do you want to stand up, sir?
Someone's going to run a microphone to you.
Yes. Hi there. Rainbow.
They're doing a
There's a
video,
mic
so
right
you need
here.
to use the microphone so people can hear your magical words afterwards.
Hi there. I'm just curious, you talked about self-driving cars and pervasive computing and a few other things. What do you see about the future of supply chain?
Supply chain's already fairly well optimized, but embedding computing throughout the supply chain is going to make it even more efficient. That's one of the things I spend time thinking about is how do goods get to you and how do they get sold to you? Supply chain has been well optimized because there was money involved in making that as smooth as possible. Being able to track objects becomes a lot easier. RFID has been great, but it's not been cheap enough to do it at the individual object level. So it's been tracked at the pallet level or the container level. We're moving to a time when we can start to track objects individually and be able to do that through a barcode so that there's multiple ways to take objects and move them from the physical to the digital. If you can take every object in the supply chain and give it a digital dimension, if you like, then you can start to track it and optimize it much better than you can today. So that's one of the areas that it will play. But analytics, we're only just starting to be able to think about how analytics will help us do everything in life, including supply chain, much better and optimize it. Humans are good at spotting patterns. Computers that have enough data in them can spot ones that human beings don't see. And to be able to use those to optimize our world is one of the sort of big areas of optimization that's left on the table today. And it will affect supply chain too.
Great. So I see a question right here in the orange shirt. Do you want to stand up and someone will bring you a mic?
Here comes a mic. Hang on. Kimberly's on her way.
Okay. So there was a big article in The Atlantic, I think last week or the week before, about the lack of women in roles in, futurism, being futurists. Mm-hmm. And they talked about how the female futurists tended to be a little more pessimistic about all this wonderful stuff. Is there anything that frightens you?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was all really, beautiful. So what frightens you about these trends of digital everywhere?
I think as a futurist, your job is not to predict what's next, but to say what's possible, hence the name of my company. When you think about the future, there's two questions to ask. What do we want to build? Because the future is built by people, as a futurist friend of mine regularly says. It's not something that happens to us. It's not passive. It's not like, oh my God, the future's coming, get the children inside. The future is something we build together. So the first question is, what do we want to build? And I was trying to address that with the presentation. But the other question that's really important to ask is, what's the future we want to avoid? And they're two equally important questions. I didn't hit that today because I had 30 minutes and I wanted to give you a fun, uplifting beginning to your time here at TechFest. And there will be others that will bring you down this afternoon because they're going to address some of those dark issues. So the question is, what am I scared of? What do I worry about? I worry about jobs. and I worry about security. When you make, I said, the digital is becoming physical. If somebody hacks your bank account, it's a real bummer. If they steal your identity, sucks. But you're still alive. If somebody hacks your car while you're driving at 70 miles an hour, sorry, 55, that's what I meant to say, and decides to take control of your car when your family's in it and crash you into a wall, that's probably more serious. So security has to be designed into the core of everything we do. So that's issue number one. I think the second one is the jobs issue, which is, there was a study came out this week, I want to say it was Deloitte, but it might not have been, that basically said over the history of technology, on balance, it has created more jobs than it has destroyed. 250 years ago, we would all have been working the land, dragging a piece of metal through the soil behind a sweaty beast, and we'd die before we were 40. Not fun. And now, people who are doing agriculture are now baristas and web designers and all those fabulous things. So technology creates jobs as well as it destroys them. The question is, will it destroy jobs faster than it creates them in the next 10 years? We are on this exponential curve, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question, but it's the one that I wrestle with the most. There are 6 million people in the United States alone who rely on driving for their livelihood. Taxi drivers, delivery drivers, truck drivers. If all those jobs go away in 15 years, what are they all going to do? Can we retrain them fast enough? So for me, in this era, Moore's era, we're going to take away some jobs. How do we retrain people and make them successful in that new world? And I don't see that the US is a country that has collectively decided to invest in education at the level it needs to. That's my biggest worry.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. We're a little bit behind time, so unfortunately we can't take any more questions, but feel free to tweet at Steve or send him an email if you have any questions about what he presented today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.